Welcome back to Community Conversations. I'm your host, Steve Mantis, and with me today are two of the folks from Hospice Northwest, Joan Williams, the Executive Director, and Sue Raynack, volunteer. Sue, now we just heard that volunteers are really what makes it all happen. What's your experience with being a volunteer and the piece of companionship with a person who's in the last stages of their life? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, certainly each relationship is very, very different, and all of the clients who I've met, I've considered a great privilege to spend time with, because they really are courageous, amazing people. And I think with the experience, what used to happen when I first started was sometimes I'd be really nervous, and I'd have really preconceived notions about what it was going to be like, and then I would meet them and get to know them, and they just become part of your schedule and your week. Depending, sometimes you visit people for an hour, sometimes 3 hours. I've spent a lot of time with some of them. It depends on the situation, because some of them have no one else, and you're the only person that's coming to visit them. Others have a lot of family support, and you're just part of that, the one spoke in the wheel. So it really varies from client to client, and it's just been a real privilege working with them, because they've taught me so many things about that process. I think I've had enough life experience and opportunities to learn about people dying, but just in my own family. But as you meet each one of these people and find out their stories, it really just supports your belief in how important it is to just know that death is part of life, and that it adds to my comfort that as I watch them go through their process, that you can do it. You can have a good death if you're prepared for it and have good support around you. I'm also involved with bereavement, so that sometimes when people just need a little extra support and companionship, if they've lost someone in their family, or just trying to cope with dealing with that death. Mm-hmm. So that's a little different experience, a different perspective, but equally satisfying and a real honor to be with those people, that you can gain their trust, and that they really work through the process in a positive way to start to manage it in their life in a more pleasant way, rather than really the depth of despair that they sometimes begin with.
Mm-hmm. Well, of course, my own experience is only on the bereavement part. I haven't had the chance yet, not in this life, anyways,
yes,
to do the death part.
Yeah.
But I've really noticed that as a family member, it's a big thing. It's events, both in losing one of our kids and, losing my dad. I'll never forget those. Mm-hmm. And just by chance, a couple of days ago, we listened to the eulogies that our family gave my dad when he passed. And, it was so great, to remember those and to notice what each one of our, the kids remembered about our dad. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure where I'm going with that, but it's just like there's some magic that's happening here with Hospice Northwest that people are volunteering to come in and help facilitate that process, and I'm just really excited about that.
Yeah, well, it is.
How do people get involved as volunteers, Joan? What if people want to plug in? What do they do, and what's that process?
As Sue was saying, we do an annual recruitment drive. So in the summertime, you usually see the Chronicle Journal is very good to us and helps us out with advertising. And so we recruit through the Chronicle and other media venues as well. And then we start our volunteer training. We do the screening. There's a fair bit of screening, criminal records checks and that sort of thing. And then start a fairly lengthy volunteer training program, which is part of our accreditation through our provincial association. So the training program goes on for about 3 months, and then people graduate from the training and sign on the forms and are ready to meet their clients.
And so if a person's interested in volunteering, what kind of time commitment are we looking at here?
A good question. We ask each volunteer, and we actually ask them to sign a commitment form that gives us access to 3 hours a week of their time.
Okay.
And so while they're actively volunteering, and people can choose to take time off, they can go on a vacation and that sort of thing, we allow that. But while they're actively volunteering, we have access to that much of their time. And if a client requires more time than that, and some do, some families need respite care. So, for instance, when a person gets to a certain point in their journey, they're often unable to be alone. But the family still has to go to work and take their kids to hockey and all that sort of thing. And so we sometimes contribute to a respite team of home care providers. And in that case, if more time is required, then we put a second volunteer in place. And the grief and bereavement is the same. We ask the volunteer to provide about that much support each week to their client. And it really helps. One of the things, I guess, one of the parts of our philosophy is that it's difficult to heal, and we consider preparation for death as part of a healing journey. Mm-hmm. And it's difficult to heal in isolation. Even though we have these thoughts ourselves and we're always reflecting and thinking about them, it's much more therapeutic to be able to talk to somebody. And particularly if that person is interested and compassionate, they're a good listener, they're allowing, and they're facilitating that conversation and that reflection, and they're keeping it in confidence, which is another part of the gift. So really, one of the things I say to clients is, you can say anything to your volunteer. You can explore any area of this that you wish, and your volunteer is not going to ensure that you are consistent and that you have the same message every week. You can explore things all over the place and contradict yourself if you need to, because you can be sure that preparing for death is not an easy thing to do. One of the things we need to do is put together, you talked about the eulogy with your dad. One of the things we need to do in preparation to have a peaceful death where we feel that we can accept it and move on, is we need to put the various pieces of our lives together into some kind of coherent story. And so that's sometimes the life review that the volunteer assists and facilitates with their client. And that allows the family to feel good and to feel like they have lived a full life, and helps the family to let go as well.
A great service. We're just out of time here. Please stay with us. We'll be right back.